Welcome everyone to another episode of Optimal Health for Busy Entrepreneurs. I am your host, Julian Hayes II, back at it again with two fascinating superhumans. It's going to be a great conversation. I am here with the brother and sister duo of Matt and Alison Synakowski. I hope I said that correct. I practiced all morning with that. Awesome. So I'm still undefeated on pronouncing names. So far, no mistakes. And so we are going to get into all things. We're talking a little bit about healthcare. We're talking about an inactivity crisis. And we're also talking about moving like a superhuman, because oftentimes we focus on just running and lifting weights, but we forget the foundational principles that allows us to do that. And we want to live well beyond 100. So Matt and Allison, thank you so much for joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning. How's it going?
Sunday morning. Thanks for having us, buddy. We just said this is our first weekend podcast, both of us doing it. So appreciate you having us on an early Sunday morning, the Sabbath.
Yes, this is it feels very comforting, just to, the sun is just coming up yeah. And, we're getting ready to dive into here. So I got some tea here. Hopefully my brain gets firing a little bit. So
I got the coffee going. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I always like to do typically is go back to the origin stories of my guests. And since you are a brother and sister duo, which is the first one, I'm curious, have you all been so close? Even like typically sometimes you don't see brother and sister being so close with each other and doing projects like this. So was that something that your family instilled?
Go ahead.
Yeah. No doubt. So yeah, we've been pretty close. We're only like 3 years apart. So Allison, very active sports family. So dad was always into sports. So we were always going to his city softball league games, his Thursday night under 40 men's league games. So we were always watching. We were active in sports right from the get-go, youth sports, youth leagues. And Allison here was she was tomboy 101. She was playing tackle football with me and the fellas up all the way through like middle school, and schooling a lot of guys. And then she was playing basketball. We were both pretty good basketball players. So she was playing up 2-3 years with the fellas for many years, and like Sunday leagues, and coming off the bench and just like working on her jumper. And so we've been close through sports. We've been close working with my dad, who was a blue collar guy. He was a truck driver. He painted houses. He mowed lawns. We were always in the car with him, going and doing that stuff, helping him with his side projects. So we've been like a close knit family for a long time. So I don't think we'd ever thought we'd be working together or doing a project like this, but like it falls within both of our interests with our sports background, and then being in the field. I was formerly in your guys' field. I ran a cardiac rehab facility for 3 years in Syracuse, New York. So we've been close. And Al, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, like little anecdote, but yeah, we've been doing this stuff for a while, at least, we've never diverged apart over the many years we've, been brother and sister here.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed, too. I don't know if it was to his dismay or not, but I was always playing, up with the guys, or wanting to be outside with them playing basketball, to the point that, they treated me like that. Like, I distinctly remember one day somebody pegged me with a ball as hard as possible in my back. And I was like devastated, hurt. So I went in, I was crying to my mom, and she was like, dude, she's like, if you're going to do that, that's what's going to happen. Like, so you can either choose that or not choose that. So as mom would tell it, I, tightened up my ponytail and went flying back out of the house and was like, all right, so like those little moments, that looking back, we were together, definitely shaped us. And same, like Matt didn't coddle me, when we were with the guys. If somebody was a total jerk, he might say something, but it was more like, if you're here, suck it up, don't complain, and let's roll. Which really, now that it's funny that we talk about that, is how we kind of treat our podcast, and what we say to people is, like, it's your life, make it.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a message that's needed, because I mean, it's, you would have to kind of be blind right now to see that kind of thing is going away. I remember like a cousin of mine, a little cousin, was playing sports. They came in like I think 6th or 7th place, and they were getting ready to get a trophy. And I was just really shocked by that.
Yeah.
And so, because it was hard for me to say congratulations for coming in sixth place. I mean, yes, I want to reward the effort, but I don't think that's setting a good example for as you get into, your later teenager years and adulthood.
Yeah. And I don't know how, I'm 40. So I'm right at the precipice when like around 4th or 5th grade. That's just when participation trophies started. And we were always kind of in MVP talk, like at the youth level. We're not, obviously we're not pros or D1 athletes here, but like we were at the top in our region, in our county. And even in 5th grade, I was like, what is all of a sudden, like 4th grade, I was getting like an MVP trophy, or like, our team was winning the championship. And then the next year we didn't have a good team. And like, I got MVP for my team, even though we were in last place. And I was like, looking at my dad, I was like, what is, as a 10-year-old, I understood, like, what is this? And it's just kept going that way. And there's, it just doesn't seem to be that you'd have a 10-year-old girl out there with the 13-year-old boys in this day and age playing tackle football, like dropping the boys a little bit or getting dropped. And she's got tears in her eyes. And I'm like, you asked to play football and you get tackled. That's how it feels. So that little edge, that little toughness. Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard not to see that it's fraying a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like, but we're doing this and we've been connecting on social. So it feels like people are trying to, there's enough of you out there. And I think we're trying to get that message collectively out. And it feels like just a little bit of that reset, but as we've talked offline a few times, like, not all hope is lost. It just feels like people are acknowledging it now and are like, hey, let's just get back to it more formally. I feel like that's kind of what's going on. But,
so what was the origin story of starting the podcast, and the podcast is Body Movement Podcast?
Go with it, Al.
Yeah. Well, number one is probably I like to rant a lot about the medical field. I get a little ornery, a little pissed off pretty quick. And,
passionate. You're passionate.
Passionate. We'll say that. So, I think one reason behind it is that, and Matt's like, dude, you got to, like, how are you going to get your voice heard? Because I can say things, I preach what I believe with my patients and, people I'm around all the time. Like it is me, this is what I am and what I do. The origin of it really was in my driveway that, Matt in our family has little things come up, as we all do, little pains.
So I have a resource for free doctor
being asked from afar to help somebody when you don't have that individual in front of you is, before the birth of telemedicine, was much harder. But Matt would be one that would listen to really what I told him to do and then feel better. So really it came down to in our driveway at home one day, at my house, he was playing basketball, just shooting hoops. And
I was airballing like 10 to 15 foot shots though. I could not reach the rim. Like my wrist was killing me.
Yes, his wrist was quite painful. I'm just running around with my kids somewhere. I don't even know what he's doing. So the air balls, I had no idea. But so he's running around and he's like, oh, my wrist. So I was like, let me check it out. So I, checked the wrist out a little bit, checked some other things out a little bit. And then we went through 4 or 5 exercises that were really shoulder and scapular based, and just kind of doing some things to, cue new patterns or just kind of help. Like the term we use is reset, which I don't know if that's the best term to use, but that's what comes to mind. And just kind of cue his body to use some different things. And probably within 15 to 20 minutes, you were 80% better shooting.
Yeah, I was like banging NBA 3. I couldn't reach the rim because my wrist was so weak around the joint. She gave me like 4 or 5 shoulder exercises to do with a kettlebell. 15 minutes later, I'm shooting like 3-pointers and I'm making them. And the pain was, 80% corrected. It still lingers to this day, but every time now I have these exercises that I got to make sure that I'm consistently doing them. But I was like, okay, what the hell was that black magic you just did? And man, we should talk about that. Like, and so, I have a business background. I've been in like the content in the media space, more on the back end. And she's just been doing this in healthcare. And you just see those two, the healthcare and the business and the marketing world don't mix well all the time.
Not at all.
So at all, right? And yeah, and all the marketing around health is trendy and influencer based. And I'm sure we can get into that too, which is part of why we started. But I was like, you know what? I've been in the media space. I'm seeing how content works. The podcast game is blowing up. Everyone's got one. So there's no reason not, and by everyone, there's like over a million. So here's metrics, business stuff. Like there's over 1 million podcasts out there at the time. I think it's like over 1.5 million now.
Oh my goodness.
There's 30 million episodes. I was like, but so what's one more? Like, and they're all niche, and it's only like the top 5 to 10%. We were talking right before we hit record about like, are we using this podcast to make money? Are you? And you're like, no. And there's 100 different ways you can use a podcast. So I was like, we don't have to get a huge following. Maybe this will get you patience. Maybe we can make some money off it. Maybe we connect with other like-minded people and learn ourselves. So it's like, we should just start a podcast because there's a market for it. And people are interested in this, and people are interested in real conversations. And do we get a big following, small following, and niche following? It doesn't matter to me, but her expertise is important. And then the foundation of building yourself and taking accountability over your health, I think, as you probably do with your podcast and entrepreneurs, scales across industries and disciplines. So we've been talking to people in politics, in media, in the military services, just the people who have just like built themselves up successfully, and how that translates to whether it be health or anything else. So all with just one little flaky wrist in the driveway, airballing shots fixed within 5 minutes, started a conversation of like, we should talk about this at a grander scale. So
yeah, because we talked, if that continued, what would the scope have looked like? So the scope would have looked like,
yeah,
maybe you went to your primary care,
right,
and they ordered an X-ray, which was negative, so that you didn't need, and now you have a deductible, and that X-ray cost you $400, right? So that session cost you $400. Now you go to the orthopedic, the wrist still hurts, and nobody's looking globally or trying to seek to understand what's going on. You maybe get an MRI. Well, that's $1,500 in our world of deductibles and medical care. And now you still have it. And now you go to PT and they work just on your wrist, and maybe it gets 50% better, and it still lingers and this
right.
and that, versus like, what's the source? So it was also a lot of discussion of where the care would go, yeah, versus I know him. He has been trying, and I always like to pick on Matt too, like the fix it mentality. He is been constantly working on his shoulder blades and thoracic spine through the years, and he's way better now than he was 5 years ago.
Still got a lot of work to do.
He's still got a lot of work to do, but people don't come in to a physician, or very rarely. There's a percentage that come in to say, I just have a pain, I want it to go away. They come in and say, I have a pain, it's affecting my life, help me. Right. So, 90% better, 10% still there, working on it, acknowledging it's there, but not affecting your life. Who cares? We all have pains. So that was a big discussion amongst that too, was where it would go in the traditional healthcare system.
Yeah, even that example right there of where you talked about his wrist and you did his shoulder. I'm sure a lot of people would just think about, hey, let me do some wrist exercises or something. And so I have something where I always call it a system mentality. So I look at the whole human system as just one whole thing where everything is connected. I'm sure you're doing this, you do the same thing, because you just went to his shoulder instead of the wrist.
Yeah,
and that requires.
And she worked her way up,
that requires a very deep understanding. And I'm thinking of healthcare right now, and healthcare does not go to those second, third, and fourth order effects. So, what led to kind of this? I don't know if disgruntledness with the healthcare, but just annoyance with the healthcare world.
For me, yeah, it was a lot of, when people get to me, or if people don't get to me, how people I love are taken care of. Examples, from the PT world would be, our young adolescents who sprain their ankle and, or whatever, get put in a boot, and they're taken out of care or out of play for 2 weeks. And then when they go back, their ankle isn't great, but they're fine, because just the phases of healing heal somebody. But their movement and their foundations of movement have been altered. And now 6 months later, they tear their ACL. And if we had just managed this injury in the beginning, I can't tell you that injury would have been prevented, but I can tell you that, you know, if your calf and quad and everything else is stronger, you do have a reduced risk of hurting something. So some of it is just seeing people on the back end when they get to me of what they've been through and what their history has been. Some is, you know, point blank, you know, calling physicians or calling somebody else about something. You know, to the worst extent, I can tell you, I had a gentleman once, an older gentleman who came in after an ankle injury and had like legit, I don't know if everybody knows what this means, but like a tunneling wound from being bedridden. So he had like a wound essentially that then tunnels, which is very dangerous for somebody. And I called his orthopedic and I couldn't get him on the line. And I couldn't get on the line. And then he went back and the orthopedic was like, "You're fine." And he came back to me, I'm like, "You're not, I'm sorry. I don't want to put anybody down ever, you know, and I don't want to step on toes. I want to collaborate." And then, you know, that collaboration sometimes in the medical field is so crappy, where people think they're above and below. And it's like, the patient is lost. Like the patient's the center, not us. Like I'm trying to help you to help them and them to get better. So that is like a distinctive point that sticks out in my mind, where he ended up having to go to wound care and get it debrided. And, you know, now you're talking vitality of a 75-year-old man, which really, really irks me, when it's probably because that individual didn't have time to listen to him or to really look, or didn't care. I don't know. You know, makes a lot of money. Does he not care? Like, what? I don't know, but that's one that really sticks with me. So a lot of that, a lot of the lack of collaboration, a lot of the inability, or I don't know if it's inability or just lack of understanding of how to implement research, you know, into practice, where people are so burnt out in the medical field. Seen it firsthand where I've worked. I've seen it firsthand from friends, where they just can't keep up with what's best for people. And whose fault is that? I don't, you know, I lots of factors. You know, I don't want to say it's a fault, but you know, if we're not able to keep up with the current events in healthcare and where things are going, we all lose out, and our society loses out on the overall scope. So
it's kind of like two factors, right? It's like the population's uneducated and no one's taking accountability for themselves. So, but then on the other side, the system is flawed in how patients are treated and what they coming in for, and even how they communicate with their doctors. And the doctors are stretched thin. So even the best ones can't always get to the root cause, because they got to get you in and out, because they got 2 more patients triple booked in the same time slot in the room, and they can only see you for a few minutes. So I think from my perspective, like I'm trying to be like, I'm the health enthusiast on the podcast, and I'm seeing that people just follow the shiny thing on Instagram or the cool trend, and they don't get down to fundamentals. And I have a former fitness background. I was in cardiac rehab, I have an exercise physiology degree. So I've been active in this space, and I'm always learning and testing new things. Alison's this expert. So it's like, hey, how can we get experts to do more things like Alison to get to root causes? And then how can we educate the public to just take some level of ownership and research on yourself and be best prepared to interact with people with Alison? But both of us coming me formerly from the rehab side and her in therapy, she's basically seeing the full culmination of all the flaws, because they come to her when it's too late, right? They've been injured. They have to rehab. People are focused on the wrist or their ankle when it's a whole nother body part, because the whole body works together. And so she's going back and building these comprehensive programs for people like me, and to get them better holistically versus just treating your knee, so that's not happening in the system. So she, you know, we talk about the time, she sees that. I see it with my friends who are always asking me what diets I'm on or what exercise programs. Like everyone's like, I just want to lose weight now. And then on the physician side, it's like, I just want to make sure when you leave, that pain doesn't hurt tomorrow. and the solution is never there. And that's how you become like a recurrent customer in the healthcare system. You relapse, you re-injure, you have multiple surgeries happens all the time. So you get addicted to pain pills, like whatever it may be, these things manifest over time. And so I think somebody like Alison just sees that on the back end as somebody who's correcting all the problems that have happened,
Yeah, you probably see that, both of you all, since you all are pretty knowledgeable in the movement space, that people will just start to go out and run. They'll just start to pick up this huge running regimen. I mean, I had to learn this lesson too, like a year ago, because I just really got into running. And I had to learn this lesson myself, that weight training is just not enough. Like, I had to really adapt to a mobility routine, because I was one of those people who probably are a little genetically privileged in terms of I can get away with some things that
I'm the same.
That most people can't. And so it takes a lot for things to like start to hurt me or anything. So so I guess let's start building out like a foundational movement. So we have people who exercise here, right? But they probably have no idea like what are some essential movements that's going to make me exercise even better, but also keep me healthy and able to move around well into my later years of life.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's all you.
Yeah. I think, I think you got to start with a couple of concepts first before we can talking movements. One that we harp on consistently is, via the World Health Organization, there has been deemed what is the amount of physical activity that we need in order to be healthy, meaning reduce our risk of diabetes, blood pressure issues, cancer, all of that, which is, where's my listeners at? I feel like I should have like the mic up for them. Like, 30 minutes of huff and puff exercise a day, 2 days of resistance training a week is really what the minimum is of movement. And the third concept is to reduce sedentary behavior. So, within that concept, the third one, I think, for a lot of fitness people is lost, because a lot of people will work out in the morning and get this, nice sweat, nice burn from, 6 to 7:30, be done and sit on our ass all day long. Mm-hmm. Like, that's not as detrimental as not working out, but it also, okay, great, you ran 5 miles this morning, but what did you do the rest of the day? Yeah. And that might have, some effects on us. So move often.
So like the body movement is movement is like reduce sedentary behaviors. It's just like, that's one you just don't hear. It's like, what should I exercise? What should I do? And nobody says, hey, like, also you just can't sit for 10 hours. You just can't do it, So that one we focus on a lot. And those guidelines Alison just gave you from the WHO, those are just the bare minimum to get in the door. And we're finding the general population does not meet those guidelines. So, just starting with the fundamentals is where we're at with our podcast. We probably want to get to where you're at, Julian, like talking more advanced stuff, mm-hmm. and maybe more a little into the science that you into. But the root problem at scale right now is just people aren't even meeting that. So I mean, that's one starting part,
Definitely so, because I think a lot of people would really, some of the issues I run into is like, hey, I want all this fancy lab testing and technology and everything, but that stuff, it's like the Iron Man thing. I always think of that, like, the technology just enhances who you already are. So if you don't have the fundamentals, you don't really need this stuff. You quote unquote need to kind of earn your way to that. Yeah. So that's one thing why, like I said, if I come across someone who wants like a genetic test or something like that, and they don't have like the basic behaviors of like eating down, they're not going to get much benefit from that, because a lot of your results are going to come just from making good, sound nutritional decisions. Yeah. This is like, after all this other stuff is basically like the last 10% of the equation. Yeah.
And and again, you've had, I think, entrepreneurs on from all walks of life and business, mm-hmm. and stuff. I've been more on the corporate side, and like data and analytics and strategy on the corporate side. And like, you see it with corporations, like they want all those fancy bells and whistles and machine learning and all, and like artificial intelligence to like geo target their customers. I'm like, you don't even have a sales team that's good. So why don't you get some sales first? And why don't you just have them cold call and present to clients and grow first before you start getting so smart and cute with all your data. It's the same. So like these trends, again, they scale across industries and sectors. You see it same here thing. You got fundamentals. If you don't have the basics down, it doesn't matter all the cute bells and whistles that you see on social media or the cool exercise that Mark Ingram was doing with a chain and on a balance ball. And like, it's cool. It's fun to see. It's entertaining, but that doesn't mean you should just go out and do it. Like, why don't we start with push-ups and pull-ups and body squats and stuff like that? Because most people, even the ones that are doing it, I know then people aren't doing them right. Mm-hmm. So there's that dual factor of like meeting the minimum and then doing it right before you can get all to this advanced stuff, then really optimize yourself.
Yeah. I feel like there's I think as humans, we just love complexity, even when it's not needed.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes that's needed. Sometimes things do need to be in a nuance, but something like eating, exercise does not really need to be that complex, at least at the beginning. Yeah. And so it seems like, when I think of like healthcare as well, seems like there's a culture problem because I forgot the stats, but I looked up since the pandemic started and now that people are still gaining weight. So the stats are still climbing. And you would think if there was any point in history, you would think now would be the time where, I'm going to try to get healthier. I'm going to try to take care of my health a little more.
Yeah.
So what do you think are some suggestions that we could do to kind of retool our overall healthcare system?
By the way, that question, like I've even asked Alison in our first few episodes, like, so like I go, how big is this mountain we're trying to solve right now? And she's like, oh God, dude, like this is like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption digging through the hole with a pickaxe, tunneling through the. So go ahead, Al. How we solve healthcare? Go ahead, you tackle that one.
Let's see here. Well, from the provide, well, number one, vested interests kill everything, right? So it just, healthcare, I don't know, and I don't know, does it start with the insurance side of things? That's possible, right? Of like, that's a possibility because right now, healthcare insurance incentivizes certain things, whether it's medication driven, and that's all vested interest, where pharma and insurance companies are just in bed together, and it is what it is. So that's an issue. So I think, that's deep seated system, trust, politics, shit I'll bitch about, but I don't really want to touch, other than to just say, pay attention. I think the healthcare individuals themselves have to revolt a little bit against that, and fight for patients, fight for time with patients, be able to, put the person in the center again, the patient in the center. So much can be discovered by just listening to somebody, listening skills. I don't know, maybe we incorporate that somewhere because, somebody's care could go down a mental health side. Somebody's care could go down, and that is what's causing pain or dysfunction or what have you. We had a sex therapist on. Some could be caused by emotional connection, with people. Some could be caused physically by what we're doing in programming. So I think from the healthcare side, kind of a wake up call of like, it's about the patient. It's not about being in one of my mentors, Craig Levinson, says all the time, like the healthcare providers are supposed to be Alfred and the individuals are supposed to be Batman. Like Batman shines, Alfred's in the background doing all the shit to help you and get you in this and that, but then you do it. So we just, and that's societal, right? I mean, that's a fix it mentality for everything. I want it, I buy it. I see it, I get it. What's that? There's a song like that. I want it, I got it, right? Like I just get everything you want, right? So that is just how we're wired right now. So, it's for the healthcare providers, I'm the call to them to step back and say, when you're talking to a patient, if you haven't at minimum asked on a healthcare questionnaire and looked at it, what is your diet like? What is your sleep patterns like? How much is your, what's your hydration like? If you don't even know those before you're jumping to heavy conclusions, if something isn't an imminent danger, like rule out cancer, rule out a fracture, I think we're really, really missing the boat. So I know that's not really an answer to your question,
but
I think it is kind of an answer, because when I hear that, I hear personalization. I hear personalization, I think it's different. Like I have a lot of friends, doctors, and they're cash-based practices now. And
Same.
They give a lot more fun. Oh, okay. They give a lot more phenomenal care. Like the results are 80 times better.
So,
but it's scary. So it's scary jumping to cash base because you don't know.
So now Alison is taking a risk, right? Like she's put. But so hopefully, what I was going to say, because Alison didn't cover that in her assessment there, but one thing is like, again, I'm putting on my business cap or a market landscape. Health insurance is a problem. Like you can only code certain things, and doctors are stretched thin, and the time spent with you, they can't fully assess. Alison's initial assessments with the patients can be as long as 2 hours, I think, where she just lets them talk. And that's how you get to, oh, it is your shoulder, not your wrist, because you can go through, you can take your time. It can be, oh, it's emotional, because we talked about this last podcast, the sex therapist, patients walk out, their pain feels better. She didn't even lay a finger on them. They didn't do an exercise. They just finally vented over the history of everything that happened for 2 hours. Total placebo, mental. Just needed to unload that, right? So she's now, again, that didn't fix the issue, but they felt better, and now they were open-minded to anything she would provide her. But she left the accredited healthcare system. So I think one solve is more doctors doing that. I don't know if it can scale right now because it's more expensive up front. So the sticker shock in the mentality of the patient, which is, again, what I'm trying to represent in the podcast, is I know that you're trained to only pay $10 in a copay to go see your doctor, but you're actually getting $10 worth of healthcare by doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of times you get what you pay,
Right.
So like, I have friends who are still trainers at the gym, and like there's a trainer for $10. There's a trainer for $100, and there's trainers in between. Oftentimes you're probably going to get what you pay for. Not every time, but oftentimes you are.
Yeah.
And that's the scary point. But because there's a lot of people who may not be able to get the type of experts and help that they need, and that's what sucks on the system.
Correct. And and so you take somebody like Alison, or we had Dr. Phil Ovadia. He's a heart surgeon in Florida. He started up his own cash practice on metabolic health. We had him on a couple episodes ago, and he's cash based on that side of things. So those practices, as you said, are providing better outcomes, which is great. This is when you get into the societal stuff, and I don't know how to fix it. How can you get the disenfranchised, the people that can't afford Alison now? How can those people get the best care? Are we freeing, if more people start going to Alison that can afford her, quote unquote, afford, one, you also got to train them. You actually are saving when you go to Alison or a cash-based practice with a good doctor, because the $1,200 you pay within 2 months' time will get you better, and there will be less chance of relapse, and you won't be in that system for 5 years. That's a harder abstract thing to sell to people sometimes. Yeah. And then
I think on scale, just, another, thing I'll text Nat about all the time is, we watch, the NFL, right? Like today will be, I'm going to sit down today through the NFL and through one of the 3-minute commercial breaks, look at how much shit is advertised to people, whether it be shitty food, whether it be
beer,
food, like crappy health style stuff versus, where's a commercial about, fresh organic fruits and vegetables? Like where's the commercial about physical activity? And, every now and then one pops in, but, the message to the public from vested interests that are addicting and tearing us apart is heavy. And, is it people banding together? Matt, how much does a commercial cost for an NFL game? 30-second spot?
I mean, for a big game, it's like over $500,000. Yeah.
All right. So, let's the three of us split $500,000 about exercise, right? Like right now, like, sorry, I can't, but, but so when you look at that and you look at the big corporations that have the money to spend, it's just tearing us apart health-wise, and nobody is out there being able to invest on the not sexy, move your body, sleep better. Like who gets paid if you sleep better?
No. Yeah, no one on the commercials. Yeah, no one in an
NFL $500,000
public supply of water that's clean for us. Okay, cool. Who's getting paid if we advertise to drink more water? Like, okay, like maybe smart water, maybe water companies could dive into this a little bit, but if they're marketing, right? Like they're playing the marketing game too, fancy bottles, a fish inside, that's cool, all this stuff. Like, but if you can, I would like to see that. Like, I would like to see the basics, people who, have the ability to promote those basics. And then you got to figure out how to make it sexy or how to make people understand it doesn't need to be sexy.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that, I have noticed, because I've been both general population, and then I realized I'm much more of a specialist that's more specifically for a specific type of individual. And I guess my long-term strategy when I think about that is to partner with someone who does entertainment, because that's something on social media as well, is that people expect to be entertained. So even if you give the best information, you're probably typically going to lose out to someone who's entertaining and polarizing, even if it's the wrong advice, because it taps into that emotion more. So long term, that's my strategy, is to find someone who's entertaining to get that message across in that way.
Yeah, and we follow each other on social now. Yeah. Obviously, this is how we got connected to do these podcasts together. But I don't know. I think you've seen. I'm trying. And I do naturally do it. I am being myself, but I am trying to write with a little bit of edge in my posts sometimes on the basic stuff. It's like, I'll say, like, have we lost it? Have we gone mad that somebody preaching eating salad is bad and he's a bad person? Like, I said that there. I was like, what the hell is going on when the CEO of Sweet Greens, who promotes healthy living and overall thing, he did it through satire, he did it through a meme. I understand we're in a pandemic, and he was trying to make a joke, but he was trying to make a bigger point of if we didn't have all these comorbidities and we were taking care of ourselves, it would have been a less of an impact in the past 18 months. It's not to downplay it, it's not to say we can't be sensitive, it's not to say that we shouldn't be taking measures to solve it, but root causes, like, have we gone mad? So I like, you're right, like the entertainment part. So like, I think, and when we have you on our podcast, I'd want to talk to you more about that, even if you want to tell us now, but like, you've been doing this longer than us, but getting your message out there, getting people to pay attention to you, but not sacrificing yourself to do it, not your integrity or whatever. But so that balance of being entertainment, plus I'm putting out good information. So like, we're figuring that out. And I think that's right. Like, you do have to have a little bit of that shiny stuff in the window just so people pay attention. So yeah, I think we're getting there, but we just launched a couple months ago. So like, we're figuring it out, but watching guys like you has helped us, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm still figuring that out, the social thing. So for me, I started to, like, I played basketball, and so basketball is my thing. So I was like, I'm just going to be Tim Duncan. So I'm just going to get good. I'm just going to get good at my craft, and, even be boring, but he's a Hall of Famer. So I think about
arguably top 5.
Yeah, I think he's top 5. So so him and KG are in the same era. KG probably gets a lot more spotlight because he's a lot more entertaining.
Yeah.
And
probably not even close.
But he's not Tim Duncan. Yeah. Not even close. But KG's awesome, but he's not Tim Duncan.
And KG's a Hall of Fame. That's how much better that guy was. Yeah.
Yeah. And
so boring.
Shaq takes a lot of attention during that time. Kobe had the attention. Iverson was my favorite player. I probably would have turned out better if I would have picked a better role model. Because I didn't
talk
train
about being genetically blessed.
Yeah, I didn't train or anything. So like I ate like my food. I ate like the 20-piece chicken nuggets, supersized fry, and a sweet tea before games.
Sure.
But I always had these crazy cramps at the end of games. And I was like, man, oh my God, I got all these cramps. And so
what is wrong with me?
Yeah. I was like, man, I don't know what's going on.
Right.
Nobody told me though.
But Iverson's never the guy you want to model after because he was a genetic freak.
Yeah.
He was a genetic freak. Yeah. But you're right, dude. And so the Tim Duncans of the world are our message of, hey, you need to push, you need to pull, you need to squat, lunge, carry, and walk. And then you got to sweat twice. You got to sweat like 3 times a week. Yeah. It's weird. There's more information about that out than ever, but it's still not gaining the traction. Like you said, we've gained collective weight over the past 2 years. Like what the hell? So I think there's got to be a level of understanding and empathy from this side of, I understand everything on the TV and on your screens is placating to your desires, to bad habits, to indulgences. So we understand that. We want you to see that so you can learn how to ignore it and then where to look for actually the good stuff. And it's a tougher hill to climb, but I think it's the way to go.
I'm reading a book right now. I don't remember who the author is, but it's called Atomic Habits.
Oh, James Clear. It's a good book.
Yep. And in just a chapter or two and just putting in perspective, how to understand the process. And the best analogy he was giving in that first chapter or two was about an ice cube. If you have an ice cube sitting at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, nothing will happen if you increase the temperature in the room to 5 degrees. The ice cube looks the same. 10 degrees, same. 30 degrees, same. 31 degrees, same. But at 32 degrees, it starts to melt. But you didn't see that first 0 to 31. And, and you think about that as catalyst. And he gives examples in there about cancer, about how, we all have cancer cells in our body, but one day, boom, they took over. It wasn't that day. Right. It was everything leading up to that. Right. So I think like respecting that process and more people sharing their process. I know I've talked about the book Range, who compares like Federer to Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, take him out. He's out. Like he's amazing. You're not like, there's going to be very few Iversons and Tiger Woods in the world that just are there. And everybody else, like a Federer, like didn't even really play competitive, like focus on competitive tennis until his high school years, like later high school years. So, but all of this building of him as an athlete and a human up until that point made him great. So I don't know, I think it's more, could there, when we say like, what is a solve? One could be on, those people in the spotlight, sharing their stories, sharing their process. And you see that here and there. ESPN will do some stories and this and that, from the sports side. But people sharing their stories about how they got through or how they built themselves. Mm-hmm. So, most people think, again, here to there, but it's like, it's not, there's a gap. And we talk about that with movement a lot. So I know this wasn't a question way early on, and it's like, okay, how do I start? Like, where do I go? And it's like, you have to start with the basics and fill these buckets first. And then when you fill those buckets, let's get fun or make it fun within like the small things. So I think the process of things is so just lost. And then nobody in the spotlight is helping to make people understand that.
Yeah, I can relate.
Like, let me fix it.
I can relate to that. And how you talk about like the foundation right there. So like I kind of retaught myself how to run a little bit because distance running is different than like sprinting. And so like I was taking these crazy long strides because I'm mostly limbs. I'm mostly just built. I'm just limbs. like my, you know, and so I had to learn.
Lanky Julian.
Yeah. And so I had to learn to like change my stride a little bit. And then I noticed like my calf, like my left side. It was always my left side. Cause I think that's from basketball too. So it's always something about my left side. And so I got to thinking, I was like, why is this like my left thing? And so like, I'm not going to ask my friends around here to like record me running, but I saw some videos and I started doing some very basic stretching. And then I just started running and I ran maybe like a quarter of a mile each time just to practice running slow. And I was like,
you're talking Alison's language. Yeah.
I was like, this sucks. I was like, this is just so boring. I'm supposed to be I'm a performing athlete.
Right.
But like I said, and this is my physical therapy story. So I in college, so I was doing some ego lifting, and it was like 240.
You're talking to the right guy.
And so put it up. Oh, that felt weird. It's like, no. Let's do it again. Boom. So I think it's like my pec minor a little bit. And so next thing I know, half of my arm is like purple. And I was like, wow, this is interesting. So I was interning at a therapy clinic then. And so luckily it wasn't a full tear, but I started kind of some light rehab to stop the scar tissue from further developing. And that helped save my mobility apparently. Because I think a lot of people would not do anything during that whole time.
100%. Yeah.
And something that small has allowed, 15 years later has gave me full mobility, strength still in this arm without any necessary surgeries or anything, just because of that little decision. And so when people think about the fundamentals and foundations and how little things can add up to huge things later in life that can come back to bite you.
Yeah. And we see that all the time. Like, again, we hopefully we get into more detailed sports specific stuff in our podcast, and I think we will. But there's just like some basic things Al would do when my shoulder stability was a problem. She would put this little ball. We talked about this on a couple podcasts ago. She put this little weighted medicine ball on my back. I'd be on all fours, and the goal is to keep the ball there. Don't let it roll off. And so she's like, "Can you just touch your shoulder, one arm at a time?" And without keeping the ball off. And like, it took me a minute to do it. And then I did it. And then I'm like, I got it. Like, I'm good. She's like, okay, well now can you crawl and do it? And like move forward. I'm like, oh, so then I crawl. I couldn't do it. And then I crawl forward. I got it. I'm like, yeah, I got it. And she's like, okay, now can you crawl backwards and do it? So like we started, but she made a game out of it was the point. And we started with something very basic and it was boring. But yet I couldn't do it. And then once I started doing it, she started like upping the ante and making it fun and became this whole game. And so I think there's just people need to seek out those individuals that will like even make the basics fun. You know what I mean? Turn it into a game because it's supposed to be. It's like working. I'm preaching to the choir. We're on a health podcast with another fit individual. Like it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a good time. It's not supposed to be a chore. Sometimes does it feel like one? Yes. But when you add these little these little tips and tricks into it, all of a sudden following that process, while it seems boring while we're talking about it, you can make it fun during that. So that's another thing we try and harp on a little bit more, is like turning it into a game. Yeah.
And one of the last things I want to talk about is you wrote an article recently called Health is Pop Culture. So what was the inspiration behind that?
I've just so I'm writing for a blog. It's a startup blog called johncore.com.
And I'll have it in the show notes for
cool.
listeners who want to check it out.
Yeah. So I just Alison talked about, we hit it on a little bit earlier, like just the nuance in the country and the way we're debating everything is just like gone bye-bye. It's just like over. And it's like people are picking teams on freaking everything. And health is the one thing what the phrase, at least you have your health, right? Like that's a phrase in the country. Like, so health is personal, and it's become, with the pandemic, it's become this weird debate. And we've let institutions like come in and control how we're talking to each other about what we should be doing with our bodies. And that somehow preaching health has become equivalent in many aspects to not being sympathetic to people who are overweight or hurt or having mental health problems. And I don't know where it went off the rails, but that's what I was trying to say. Health is now pop culture. Health is now political. Fine. We collectively need to just accept that it is, and it's part of it. And that speaking with conviction about health, saying that you should be healthy is not saying, hey, you're fat.
Yeah.
You big jerk, you loser. It's not doing that. It's saying, hey, like, look at Julian, look at me. Like, we're fit. We're happy with ourselves. We're good. We're lively. You can do the same, even though I know you're going through some struggles and there's people out there that will help you. It's just to say, I just said two things at once. I said, it's awesome being in a healthy shape. I'm proud of myself and I want you to come with me. And on LinkedIn, we're on LinkedIn a lot, posting. Dude, how often do you see these influencers of entrepreneurs or big tycoons or people from Shark Tank giving tough love to entrepreneurs? It's like, oh, you just want to make money, but you don't want to follow the process. You know, like, you just want to get likes and all this stuff. Well, why is health any different? It's like, what they're saying to entrepreneurs is follow the process, go through those tough times, and then your business will be successful. Don't chase the money, chase good systems, good practices, client management, lead generation. Why is health any different? If you're out of shape, the goal is to be in shape. If you're a poor or a startup, the goal is to become a Fortune 500. Neither of those happen overnight. And somehow in business, we get this free pass to like point and lecture to people, which I think is okay. They're just providing tough love. And so you can be empathetic while speaking with conviction, was my point. And so I've seen this weird debate where you have to say, no, it's okay to be overweight. It's okay to not do anything. And I understand you're going through some pain and you'll come out when you're ready. People will not come out when they're ready because they won't know when they're ready. Yeah. So I think more people like us need to be more vocal about, I'm on your side. And me saying that I'm in shape isn't saying, look at how great I am. It's saying, I feel good and you should feel good too. And this is how I got here. Why don't you come with me? Like, we can do this together. So I wrote an article. I had a little edge to it, a little bit of satire, but I don't like the way we're talking to each other as humans today. And preaching overall health in the midst of the pandemic somehow people think that you're downplaying the pandemic. And it's like, you can do both. Yeah. Both can happen. So that was like the genesis of my article. And I wrote a couple on there about that. And so I don't know. I'm taking that weight on, and I'm, again, our following is not large, but I want that message to try and get out, and hopefully it will over time. And hopefully it sparks better conversation. I don't know but that's where the genesis of it was. Yeah.
It takes time to change the culture. And I think, if each person does their little part in adding to that culture, then it's going to collectively become something massive. So correct. I think, I love, the edge and the brand you guys already have already. So I think you're going, I think you're going big place.
And Alison's doing it too on the healthcare side. She's saying to what I'm saying to the public, she's saying to her peers, hey, you're not treating patients good enough. You're not getting to root causes. You're not taking the time to find out what's wrong with them. You need to do better. So if we take this dual approach of making providers more self-conscious, implementing better research, they're providing better care, and we're also in a mindset of being better consumers, then hopefully that it speeds up this mountain we're trying to climb, which is still going to be a mountain to climb.
Yep, absolutely. And I think this is a great way to end this. This has been an awesome conversation. Where can listeners keep up with you guys?
So personally, we're on YouTube, the Body Movement Podcast. If you search that on YouTube, that's where you find us. Personally, if I have a website, www.alisonsynakowski.com. We'll just spell that out for you later. And on there, I have my own little blog going. The link to the podcast is on there, and also the link to where I am for physical therapy is on there. And probably in the next few months, I'll have more of a virtual fitness platform as well. That's coming down the pipeline. But for now, my website is where you can find everything. And then YouTube is where you can find our podcast.
Yeah, YouTube for the podcast. For me, I'm just on LinkedIn, Matt Synakowski. On Twitter, I'm Matt Synakowski. On Instagram, I'm Matt Synakowski. So you can just find me there. I'm contributing to johncorer.com as just a contributor on that blog website. And we'll be eventually taking our podcast to the audio version. We thought we were going to be very video based with physical demonstrations and stuff, but we've been having conversations like this. So we're going to be transitioning to an audio version too. But right now it's YouTube. But look for us on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff in the future.
Awesome to hear. And I'll have all this in the show notes. And
great.
For the listeners out there, stay awesome, be limitless. And as always, go be superhuman. Peace.